if you want it to be a business, it's difficult to make it a business. So it's the people that want it to be a business but still treat it like a hobby that are frustrating for me.
What's up, everyone? This is Sahil here, and welcome to the Sehgal Show, where I'm gonna be interviewing some crazy entrepreneurs out there who started from scratch with no experience, resources, and connections, and then later on became unstoppable and dominating figures in their respective businesses. We're gonna dive deep into the mindset of these super successful entrepreneurs to find out how they did it and how you can model it too. It's time to pick their brains and uncover all the strategies and tactics which these entrepreneurs use to scale their businesses from nowhere to multiple 6, 7, and 8 figures. Welcome to the Sehgal Show. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Sehgal Show, where we interview some unstoppable entrepreneurs who are dominating figures in their businesses. Sahil here, back again with an awesome, insane guest. Our today's guest is a real deal. He went from being a door-to-door salesman to building a multi-million-dollar network using podcasting. He's the founder and CEO of Guestio.com, a podcast booking platform. He's also the co-host of the top-ranked podcast like Build Your Network, Figuring It Out, where he has interviewed people like Shaquille O'Neal, Grant Cardone, Tillman Feretta, Molly Bloom, John Maxwell, and hundreds of others. In addition to that, being on the top of guest on top podcast shows like Bigger Pockets, EO Fire, Born to Impact, he has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, TechCrunch, and dozens of other media outlets. Without wasting any more time, let's welcome Travis to our show today. Welcome, Travis.
Hey, what's up, Sahil? How's it going, man?
Good, man. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. A little sick, so apologize if my voice sounds a little weird or if I start coughing a little bit. I'll try to mute myself or something. But yeah, just getting over a little bit of sickness here. But other than that, everything's good, dude.
It's okay, man. I wish you all the healthy vibes. Get well soon.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, man, for coming on. It's a pleasure and honor to have you, first of all, on our show today. Really a blessing.
Yes, sir. Yeah, let's rock and roll.
Absolutely, man. When and how you all this journey started, man, for you? Like, when were you bitten by this podcasting bug?
Podcasting specifically was just kind of a result of being a listener and a fan of podcasts myself. I liked the medium. I wanted to, start learning about entrepreneurship and different things like that a little bit more intentionally. And I just didn't want to. I wasn't like a big reader, so I really liked the podcast medium because it was conversational, it was easy to listen to. I could press play and go do a number of different activities and still kind of download information. And so I just kind of liked the medium as a listener. And then after a while of listening, I was just like, I wonder if I could start my own one of these. And yeah, started a show a little while later. And, that just kind of kept opening more and more doors in the industry as we continued to go along.
That's awesome, man. I'm sure that you have done like near about 800 plus episodes so far, if I'm not wrong. Don't know the
Yes,
exact
sir.
number though. That's a crazy number out there. So when was it exactly? Like, I know you've been doing from a couple of years. Or which year was it when you started?
2017. Yeah, I think I launched in August of 2017.
Oh wow, not a while ago. That's good, man.
Mm-hmm.
How were the initial stages of your journey at that time? Like, I'm sure when you were sending out messages or reaching out to the guest, it's not like all the people were ready to come at the first invite. So how was it in the initial stages?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough back then, dude. I mean, first off, podcast guesting wasn't quite as, well known or recognized as it is now. So it was already a little bit more difficult to get people to say yes. But yeah, to your point, I was starting from scratch. So nobody knew who I was. I didn't have any, big connections or any reasons for people to say yes to any of my shows early on. There wasn't really a reason to do any of those things. So yeah, it wasn't very easy. It was just a matter of, I just stayed in the game, kept asking people, and then people started saying yes. And the funny thing about getting the first couple of people to say yes is that it's much easier to get the next few people to say yes. And then it's much easier to get the next few people to say yes. And then it's much easier to get the next few people to say yes. So kind of is like this really difficult thing at first. You're pushing a boulder uphill. Once you push it over to the other side of the hill, and it kind of starts picking up a life of its own and rolling on its own, and you're trying to chase it and keep up with it. And that's kind of what happened.
Oh man, that's impressive. And I think it's more of consistency that matters more than anything else. Sometimes your maybe motivation lags behind, and your consistency is the one that keeps you pushing. What
Yeah.
was your any motivation that what pushed you every day? Like what was your why to keep it doing, to keep trying even when people were saying no and all that?
Yeah, ultimately, it's the commitment to consistency. Anytime you start a new venture, in my opinion, like there kind of has to be some parameters over whether, like, over at what point you're going to maybe like reevaluate if that's an option. Sometimes you're just doing something, and you're just like, I know this is something that I really want to do, so I'm going to figure it out regardless. And that was kind of how it was for me in podcasting. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when, and it was just a matter of like how is it going to happen. It was still the commitment at the beginning though, because it was still like, I'm going to do this. I think what I committed to myself was 3 episodes a week for 2 years. And if I get done with 3 episodes a week for 2 years and it doesn't really make an impact and I'm still spinning my wheels and nothing's really happened, then at that point I'll, take a breather, take a step back, and then reevaluate if it's something that I'm going to, continue doing or not. But that's 3 episodes a week for 2 years. That's
It's a
what,
lot.
300 plus episodes to commit to, without ever missing an episode. And most people just have this really severe underestimation of how long it's going to take to do something well. It's like, well, I'll start this podcast thing for 4 months, or they don't even do it for 4 months. They put out 3 episodes because they recorded one or two at the very beginning, and then they never record another one again. And then they kind of talk crap on podcasting. It's like, well, if you're going to have a show, you got to create a show. The Tonight Show has been going on like every single night for decades. You know what I mean? And Jimmy Fallon still finds ways to make it interesting,
Yeah.
and finds ways to bring in viewership and impressions to their show. So, you got to treat your show the same way. You're competing for the same eyeballs. So do a better job, and know that at first you might not even know what it means to do a better job because you haven't put any reps in at all. You have no idea what that means, right? So like there's a big big learning curve, and you got to be willing to push through the callous phase, is what I call it. Because when you play the guitar, the there's like the first 3-4 months that just suck. It's just not fun at all. You try to put your fingers on the strings, you can only really form like one chord, and you go to strum the chord, and all the strings are buzzing because you can't push all the way down on the frets, and they're like hurting your fingers. Like you try to play for 20-30 minutes and your fingers are like red and sore because you're trying to push down on these metal strings, especially the little strings. It's just seemingly impossible. But then what happens over a couple months of doing that is you literally form calluses on the tips of your fingers. And so it becomes easier to push that chord down and get an actually nice sound of it. And then all of a sudden you got another chord, and then you got 3 chords. Now you know how to switch between those chords. And now you can play a song. And it's just like that callus phase is so difficult because you're putting in the work, but you're not seeing any of the results. Because you have to adopt this new version of yourself before you're seeing any results of that new version, and it can be difficult to push through that time period. And most people just won't do it. And especially in like content or podcasting or business or all these other senses, that callous phase is longer than 3 months. Sometimes it can be 3 years, or sometimes it can be 8 years before you cut your teeth in this certain thing and you see like a larger portion of success than what you think that you deserve or whatever. It's like it might take a lot longer than that.
So true, so true. I love that thing, man. Like doing 3 episodes a week for 2 years. Then by that time, you know that now it's you can't leave it. By the time you'll fulfill that commitment, so
Right.
that's
Right.
smart. I literally love that. Any day that you felt like, I'm curious to know, any day you felt like not doing the show today or not feeling like, hey, I don't want to do that. Well, what do you
Of
usually do?
course. Yeah, absolutely. There's days like that. But that's why I try not to leave it up to my bad day self. I always try to leave it up to my good day self, meaning that
Mm,
I'm not going to let my show catalog get down that far. Like to me, it's never a matter of like a day-to-day thing because I always have episodes batched. So like right now, I think we have episodes going. Like if I didn't record any more episodes, I think we would be releasing for the next 6 to 8 weeks
mhm.
without missing an episode. if I recorded 0 more episodes in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Huh.
So I always recommend having like a big buffer between your release schedule and your time, because that's when it starts being a drag. And like you said, to your point, it's like, I don't feel like doing an episode today. And it's like, well, most days I don't do episodes. I record 3 or 4 episodes in a day when I record, and then I don't record for 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So, it's not necessarily even about like, I don't feel like recording today, or I don't feel like recording tomorrow. It's more just keeping ahead of your schedule and keeping a plan that you're going to stick to, so that you can maintain a schedule of batched shows, without missing any episodes, or dipping in quality. That's the other thing. Is like, you might get an episode out, but it's your worst episode yet because you recorded it at 11:53 p.m., edited it in 30 seconds so you could get it out by midnight. Like, you're going to take a dip in quality, you're going to take a dip in consistency, and those are like the two biggest growth killers.
Oh, makes sense. Definitely. What's a like a biggest unfair advantage that you think you got with the podcasting? I want to really inspire people also to start their show. Like a lot of time people are just dragging. They're like, oh, it's not printing me any money. It's because they don't see the long term, the benefits of all that stuff. So what do you think is the biggest unfair advantage you think you got with podcasting?
The connections, for sure. We get decent downloads and we make some money here and there, and we bring in deals, and it's kind of, it acts as a big credibility driver, helps me with like my communication skills. That there's a lot of other reasons to have a show, but probably the unfair advantage, to your point, is probably just the people that I've been able to connect with and talk to.
Ah,
People,
makes sense.
like rooms that I've gotten into that I shouldn't have been in, just because I had a podcast, or like I knew all the people in the room because I interviewed all of them. So they all knew my face or recognized me and let me in the room, So there's been a lot of like tables, quote unquote, that I've gotten a seat at that I probably should not have had a seat at, but
Mm,
because of my podcast, I did. And those can be the differences between, I mean, between having not much and having a multi-million dollar business. You know what I mean? It's just like
yeah.
being in the right rooms with the right people, and having the right conversations with them. So that it's been the cheat code, as far as I'm concerned, the Trojan horse, to make connections with people I never thought possible.
So true, right on. Like you've interviewed all these big names out there, Shaquille O'Neal, Grant Cardone, and all these. I saw your all the YouTube channel yesterday, and that. So, like when you were starting out, obviously these names were not easy to get on, and obviously guestio.com was not there. We're gonna dive deep into that later on. Well, who was your first biggest guest yet? You felt like you cracked it, and how did you bump into it?
My first one was John Lee Dumas,
Mm,
with a show called Entrepreneurs on Fire, a big business podcaster. And he was kind of the person that, quote unquote, inspired me to start one. Like, somebody told me to listen to his show. I started listening to his show, and then took his free podcast course, and was just like, this seems like something I could do. And so the way that I got him on my show was I actually paid to go to a mastermind at his house,
mm,
in Puerto Rico. So I went to Puerto Rico and went to this mastermind, and it was a higher ticket for a weekend. It was $6,500, and like that, for me at the time, that was the most I'd ever invested in any sort of like personal development by a long shot. So $6,500 for 3 days, no continuity, no like weekly calls, none of that stuff afterwards. Just 3 days in Puerto Rico with like 5 other people, plus the trip to Puerto Rico. So it was like an $8,000 weekend was all said and done. And I asked him to come on my show, and he said yes. And then once I got that one, bigger name, it was a little bit easier for me to go to the next person, the next person, the next person, and basically leverage his name and say, hey, I've already had John on the show. And so I was able to kind of use that to get the next one. And then now it's just at a point where I go see who the person that I want to get on my show. I go see all the people that they follow or who they interact with, and I list like all of the names that I've had that they follow, they know, they like, they trust, any sort of combination of those things, and include all of those in the reach out. And it makes it almost, makes it much, much easier, I guess I'll say, for me to get the guests that I want to get now.
That's awesome, man. John is amazing. John Dumas. We had a chance to interview him on our show today. Amazing guy. And so you spent like above $8,000 to get into that circle and to surround yourself about that. For people who are starting now, let's say they don't have this kind of investment to invest in, what's your biggest advice to these people who want to start a show, want to have big guests out there? What's the best place they can start with and how they can
Well,
do it?
really, I mean, like I paid off my credit card, but I hesitate to give this advice because I don't want people to take me in a different light and use it as an excuse to go spend a bunch of money and then not have any money to pay it back. But what
Mm-hmm.
I did is I had a 0% credit card that I pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of my first year in podcasting, I had it full. It was a $42,000 credit limit on that card. I had it completely full with trainings, courses, masterminds, memberships, coaches, flights, travel, hotels. Like I was serious about building a business. Like I
Mm-hmm.
wanted financial freedom through an online mechanism. That was all I knew. I had no idea how it was going to get done, what it was going to be, what it was going to look like. You know, I had zero clue on any of that. All I knew is that I was fully committed to making this particular thing happen. And I did it. And I never paid a dime in interest on that card. I paid it all off before I ever had to pay interest on it. And if you get in a bind, you can open up a new 0% credit card, do a balance transfer, and not have to pay interest. Or you can refinance the debt to these like smaller term loans for, 6% interest or something like that instead of 26%. I'm saying there's like ways to be smart about it, leverage these types of debt vehicles that can be positive. It's just the temptation is to use that debt and go buy stuff that you want to buy and start putting like new computers and fancy equipment and all this other stuff that you don't need to generate revenue onto that card. And that's how you end up with $30,000 in debt and no way to pay it off in a year from now. And you're yelling at me going like, well, Travis told me, it's like, well, no. I'm telling you to just use it on things that are going to help you make money. And that's what I did. Is like, I didn't have a ton of money at the time either, but my commitment outweighed my financial situation. Like my desire and commitment combined was enough for me just to be like, this is a lot of money, but we'll see how it goes, and to be fair, at the time I was also doing door-to-door sales, and I knew that if I'd worked more on doors that I could earn more money that month to pay off my cards faster. So, there, I understand not all income is created equal. So there's some discrepancy there, but my point is like, if you're truly committed to something, you have to make the decision, especially if you're a podcaster at the very beginning, got to make a decision, which is this a business or is this a hobby?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a hobby, then ignore everything that I just said and do it for as cheap as you possibly can. Do it for something that's just going to be something that's fun for you, that you're going to enjoy, because podcasting is cool in the fact that it can just be a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be something that turns into this massive thing that makes you a ton of money or changes your life like it did for me. It can be something where it's just, hey, this is my on purpose time to connect with two of my buddies from college. And we talk about the Cincinnati Bengals for an hour and we drink beer in my garage. Like it can be that.
Yeah.
But if you want it to be a business, it's difficult to make it a business. So it's the people that want it to be a business but still treat it like a hobby that are frustrating for me when I'm trying to help
Mm-hmm.
people out. Because it's like, okay, you want it to be a business. We'll do this, 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 and this. And they're like, well, that's too expensive. I can't do that. I don't have enough time. And it's like, oh, okay. So you want all of the upside without any of the risk. That's what you're telling me. Like, that's not how it works. I don't know how to explain this to you. That's not how it works. If you want a business, treat it like a business. You're going to have to invest money into it and or time. Both is best, but one for sure. You're going to have to invest either money or time, probably both, to make this a successful business or arm of your current or existing business. It's not just going to be something that you can just like set on autopilot, create an SOP and be like, never have to do that again. You know what I mean? So make the commitment at the beginning, decide, is this a hobby or is this a business? And if it's a business, you better treat it like a business, because it's going to pay you in direct proportion to how you treat it, just like any other part of your business. So I have no idea what your question was or if that tangent rabbit trail answered anything that you asked me, but yeah, I got a little fired up there for a second.
It makes sense. It makes sense, man. We were talking about like how to start it without buying that. Like you went all in, invested $8,000 and all that. A
Yes.
lot of people just wanna, and it makes sense, man. Like really, talking about business and hobby, I got a follow up question, like more of a selfish question here. What is the best way or a framework you recommend to monetize your show? Like, if you really want to go all into that business part of it.
Like, what's the best way to monetize?
Yeah, what's the best way or a framework, yeah, according to you, to monetize the show?
Yeah, so there's two kind of, in my opinion, like, I guess, schools of thought on this. One is your podcast is the product, which means that you're going to be selling sponsorships, doing, affiliate promotions. You're essentially just selling the traffic, the eyeballs, the attention that you have. That way is, excuse me, to me, like the holy grail of revenue. So you take someone like, since we've been talking about him a little bit, John Lee Dumas. I mean, you make 6 figures in sponsorship income every month. That's just pure income. You don't have to. There's no fulfillment. There's no customer this or that. He records some ads and he releases them on his show. That's the extent of that. So that margin on that revenue is very, very, very high, and it can be awesome. The downside of that revenue is it takes a long time to build up your podcast audience to a point where you can actually monetize through sponsorships, especially to the degree of 6 figures a month. So we're talking, John's getting, I don't know the exact numbers, probably a couple million downloads a month to get that type of revenue. So, if you're at 12,000 downloads a month, you're not going to be anywhere near close to that, and probably won't even be able to get a single sponsor unless it's somebody that you reach out to, pitch yourself, and make a deal with. So one way is your show is the product.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the kind of ultimate goal and something to strive for, but it's just going to take a longer time, especially if you're like me and you're starting from just like dead scratch. There's no audience, there's nothing built. You're starting from scratch. It's going to take a while. Second option is to build your own products or services and promote those through the show that you build. And that is a much, much, much faster path to revenue. But to be fair, it also means you have to develop some other skill sets. If you are getting into podcasting and you've never been in business and you don't know how to sell and you don't know how to market and you don't know how to write copy or build websites or do any of these other things, then you got to learn something if you want to build a business on the back end of it. However, if you're already a business owner, the podcast can just like promote your own products or services and allow you to connect with people that make you a more credible voice in your space, which makes it easier to sell your products and services. So if it were me and I was just starting and I just had a podcast and I didn't want to like build this massive, 8-figure operation, I just wanted to have something that allowed me to podcast full time, then I would just start a little podcast production agency or something like that. Start a little social media agency, like a boutique firm. You charge, $500 to $2,500 a month. You get 4 or 5 clients. You take care of them. You take care of your show, and now you're, living that laptop lifestyle. You got 4 or 5 clients. You got maybe a VA that's working for you, doing some heavy lifting, and you make $60,000 to $80,000 a year being a full-time podcaster. There's a lot worse things to do with your time. So that would be the way that I recommend to most people is that's why we tend to work with mostly entrepreneurs, because we know that we can help entrepreneurs monetize more effectively rather than like helping somebody who's starting a Cincinnati Bengals podcast with their 2 buddies in their garage. It's like, well, if you're not willing to do anything beyond that, then it's going to be a long path to monetization for you. But if you are willing to do something beyond that, like start a business, start a service agency or a coaching business, like something that allows you to be able to have just a small number of clients without a ton of team members, learning how to, like, you don't have to learn how to scale a massive business in order to do this thing full time, is my point. There's multiple ways to monetize the podcast, but those would be the 2 like main ways, like your own products or services, or your show is the product, your audience is the product, and you sell that to sponsors or sell products to your audience for affiliate commissions or whatever.
Oh man, that's super insightful. Gave me some epiphanies. And I have a follow-up question coming in my mind. Like, what is the frequency you would recommend to keep doing? Like every week, like you did 3 episodes a week. What is a good frequency? I want to do it more. Actually, I'm doing 2 times in a month right now, but
Okay.
I'm getting more addicted to it. So it's like starting as a hobby, and then turning into now a business. I'm looking for ways how can I do it more of this. Although I have a back end offer of coaching, So what do you recommend the frequency and how do you
You should
expedite
at least be doing weekly.
weekly?
At least be doing weekly. My advice is get as close as possible as you can to daily, like every day, 7
Oh, wow.
days a week, without sacrificing quality, consistency, or your sanity. Those are the 3 rules.
Say that again.
So release as many episodes as you possibly can without sacrificing quality, consistency, or your own sanity. So if you can do 1 a week, and that's the most that you can do while maintaining high quality, maintaining consistency week over week, and maintaining your mental health, do 1 a week. If you
What?
can do 7 a week
Mhm.
without sacrificing quality, without missing any days, and in a way that's structured enough of a system where you're not driving yourself crazy to come up with the content, do 7 days a week. More is better in terms of the algorithm, in terms of your skill set, in terms of connecting with more people, in terms of business development, in terms of selling more people into your coaching offer. More conversations with people that are qualified to do business with you is better than less conversations, period. But it's a lot more work. So that's why I say, you might be able to keep up with quality and consistency, but then your sanity's going down the toilet. And it's like, well, maybe can I keep up my sanity and do 4 a week instead of 7 a week? Like then that's probably worth it, because you're going to burn out. If you burn out in 4 months, then there goes the consistency that we talked about. So like those are the 3 rules. It's like do as many as you possibly can. Just don't ever sacrifice quality, don't ever sacrifice consistency, and don't ever sacrifice your own sanity.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. In terms of that, I was gonna ask, like, do you prefer to do more solo shows, or do you prefer to more like guest shows like this,
Interviews.
interviews?
I'm a big believer in interviews. I think that they are better than solo content in multitude of ways. Now, you should probably also do some sort of a solo segment or solo episode.
Mm.
Especially if you're going to be releasing multiple times per week, it makes sense to have like, hey, we do at least 1 interview, we do at least 1 solo show. Just because, like, to me, like your podcast should be increasing multiple parts of your brand. So credibility is one of those parts.
Yeah.
Credibility comes from interviews. If you see me interviewing Shaquille O'Neal, you'll automatically assume that I'm at a certain caliber of person because I'm having a conversation with Shaq. That's just
Mm.
a psychological factor that's going to exist in your conscious or subconscious mind. Like you see Travis with Shaq, you automatically assign a level of credibility to me just because you see our faces next to each other. So credibility is huge in terms of like having people come to you for your business, making it easier for you to close people into your business. So credibility is a big piece, and interviews bring you credibility. Solo shows bring you authority.
Mm.
Because you're talking about a certain topic and you're giving, maybe advice, or you're giving a structure, you're giving a lesson, you're giving a formula, you're giving something, and it's you that the audience is getting that piece of value from. So there's authority and credibility in both interviews and solo shows. I just find that interviews, to me, are the much like a faster way to grow your brand, grow your audience, grow your credibility, grow your network, build more relationships, bring in more business development deals, find yourself in better rooms, book yourself to speak on stages. There's just so many other reasons to do interviews, which is why, like, if you're going to do 3 a week, do 2 interviews, 1 solo. If you're going to do 4 a week, do 3 interviews, 1 solo. Like, to me,
Mm.
especially if you're just getting started. Like
Yeah.
so for instance, like we have some clients who they've been in business for a long time. They exited their company for $100 million, or they're doing $60 million a year in their business. It's like, if you're doing that, then yeah, you should probably do some solo content because you got a bunch of really good stuff to share. But like when I was first starting, I was a 24-year-old door-to-door salesman.
Mm.
Like realistically, unless I wanted to do a podcast about how to sell door to door, which I didn't want to do, then for the most part, like I should keep my mouth shut. I'm here to learn just as much my audience is here to learn. That's why I did I did 3 episodes a week. They were all interviews. I did 0 solo shows. And it's not going to make your audience distrust you it's not going to make your audience like distrust you at all just because you don't have solo shows going out. Like they come to learn through the vehicle that is you. So they still want to stick around and listen to how you ask questions, how you engage with people, the guests that you bring on, the network that you have. Like there's still a bunch of reasons for them to listen to you, even if the majority of your content's interviews. So I always recommend interviews.
That's brilliant, man. And I don't think so. There's gonna be like the one point that's coming in my mind is coming to saturation. I don't think so that exists in podcast shows. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it doesn't exist really in anything, man. Like if you're good, there's no such thing as saturation.
Yeah.
That's what's important. is I had this conversation with Tom Bilyeu because Tom Bilyeu built Quest Nutrition,
Yeah.
which is like a protein bar company, which is one of the most competitive spaces out there. And they built it from 0 to $1 billion in 4 years. And then he bounced, he exited. It was something crazy like that. 4 years, maybe 5. I don't know. It was a very short period of time. Number 2 on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing company list in one of the most competitive spaces out there. And I was like, why did you pick this space? And he was like, it was just an area that I was passionate about. And he said, there's always room for the best.
Mm.
It was like that's it right there. Steve Martin said, be so good they can't ignore you. It's just a matter of like, so many things are saturated. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't start on YouTube because it's saturated. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't start a blog because it's saturated. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't write a book because it's saturated. All of the content markets are saturated. There's no surprise. There's there's no lack of content. But you don't see Netflix being like, well, we stopped making original content because TV is saturated. You don't see Disney like, oh, we stopped making movies because it's just saturated. Like they keep doing it. They keep doing it. They keep doing it. They keep doing it. They make it the best they possibly can. And they find the people that give a shit about the stuff that they want to talk about the most. And that's your job.
That's so deep, man. You dropped so many gold nuggets I have to collect after this. I have to rewatch this interview. Really love that whole thing. I want to touch base with you on I know you have limited time, and on the guestio.com. So if for the people who don't know about it, what is it, how it can help other people, if you can touch base on that.
Yes. And then, I have to have a call with my CFO on my team right now in a couple of minutes here. So,
Yep.
but yes, Guestio was essentially our solution to the problem of you want to get really good guests on your show, but you don't want to wait a year and a half till you have a certain amount of clout and credibility. You can go to Guestio, to the marketplace side, and pay for some of the better guests that you want to bring on your show. Especially if you're in like the coaching space, there's quite a few people on there. There's just like, oh shoot, $500, $1,000, and I can bring this person on my show. It makes my show look instantly more credible and makes my other guest reach out that much easier. May as well supplement what I'm already doing with buying a couple of these interviews, and make my job a little bit easier, shortcut that line to success, so to speak. So that's at guestio.com. Really easy, straightforward to use. You can do free media kit, set up your show, set up your guest profile, brag on yourself, make yourself look awesome, pitch shows, pitch guests. It's kind of the ultimate connection site.
That's awesome, man. I'm going to drop the link for that under the show notes. So people who are watching us, you can go to over that. And if you have any plan to start your podcast show and all that, you have that goal sitting right there. You can have all the links and guests over there. Thank you so much, Travis, for your time, man. It was really short and crisp. Really love the conversation. Thank you so much
Appreciate
once
it, man.
again for doing it.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
You're welcome, man. People who are watching us will connect together with another episode. Stay tuned. Take care.